Good afternoon and welcome to the Pre-Kindergarten Data Reporting webinar. Just a few logistics before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, so it will be made available after the conclusion of the webinar. There is a slide deck. The PowerPoint is attached within the handout section, so feel free to access that and download that. It will also be made available to the TEA website on the webinars page. Also, please feel free to type in any questions as we progress throughout the webinar. We'll have some time at the end to be able to review some of those questions and provide a response as appropriate, and any questions that are unanswered, we'll go ahead and respond to those via email. So please be assured that we will take your questions and then respond to them as quickly as we can after the webinar. So to start out, my name is Howard Morrison. I'll be your presenter today. I'm the statewide coordinator in the Early Childhood Education Division. My role primarily revolves around early childhood policy and laws and rules, but also the early childhood data system, which includes pre-kindergarten and kindergarten information. So the goals for today's webinar is to become more familiar with the pre-kindergarten collection in the early childhood data system, to learn about private pre-kindergarten participation in ECDS, to learn about the early childhood data system data standards, and to become more aware of available early childhood education data. So we'll start with a review of the early childhood data system. So the purpose of the early childhood data system is to better inform families, school administrators, educators, community stakeholders, and policymakers about pre-kindergarten programs and preparing children for success in school. The overview of the ECDS is that it's a statewide reporting feature of the Texas Student Data System. The system includes the collection of both pre-kindergarten and kindergarten student data. All of this is due to Texas Education Code 29161, 28006, and 291532 that authorizes this collection. Many of the data elements have been expanded due to previous legislative sessions and align with our TSDS PEIMS collections. So there are a number of data elements collected in ECDS, and I'm going to go through a few of them today, or majority of them today. So student demographics, funding sources, special program information, pre-kindergarten school type, student instruction type, the number of half-day and full-day pre-kindergarten classes, the pre-kindergarten class size and ratios. A lot of the pre-kindergarten program type and school type will include half-day, full-day, whether it's a public school, Head Start provider, or licensed childcare with those selections for partnership programs. We'll also include the names of curriculum, the names of the administered pre-kindergarten progress monitoring tools and kindergarten assessments, the high-quality pre-kindergarten program indicator, which this also fires validations for family engagement plans, the URLs that are submitted, and then the additional teacher qualifications. The timeline that we're looking at for the ECDS pre-kindergarten collection timeframe, in August of 2018, PEAMS and TSDS were open to users in general. And then in October, ECDS was ready for users to submit LEA data. However, we know that majority of the data that's being submitted is a compilation from beginning of end of year data, which is then generally submitted later in the year. We also allow for private pre-kindergarten providers to participate, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The deadline for those new private providers to request a BPD organization number is June 28th. And then on July 18th, 2019 is the end of the ECDS data collection. So we will complete the pre-kindergarten portion of the ECDS submission. And so all data would need to be submitted by that time frame. And with that said, all public pre-kindergarten providers would need to submit data into ECDS regardless of having pre-kindergarten progress monitoring assessment results or not. So even if it's a pre-kindergarten program that has a half or full day program and does not have a commissioner-approved pre-kindergarten progress monitoring tool, they would still be required to submit that previous information that was mentioned regarding the student information, class sizes, ratios, type of curriculum, etc. So when we're looking at student progress monitoring information, our agency has a commissioner's list of approved pre-kindergarten and kindergarten assessment instruments for the use during the 2017 through 2021 school years. This includes both lists here that are hyperlinked within the presentation. To get a closer look, the list includes tools that are available in English and Spanish, and has content areas in emergent literacy reading and writing, language and communication, health and wellness, and mathematics. The commissioner's list of pre-kindergarten assessments are collected in ECDS. Any non-commissioner approved assessments are not able to be collected within the ECDS system. And then an LEA must complete an alternate assessment form to submit to TEA. So that's just a survey form that collects district charter level information, the type of alternate assessment that's used, and then we'll compile that annually. So the ECDS collection allows for private pre-kindergarten programs to participate in the statewide data collection. So why should private pre-kindergarten providers participate? To create stronger alignment and communication between early childhood stakeholders, to identify strengths and opportunities for developing effective classroom instruction and support, to build collaboration and access to resources provided by regional education service centers, to view reports to see how students perform on kindergarten entry, and to receive early access to unique IDs. So I think the driver in that, the main benefit would be the collaboration, but would also be to see how their students are performing in kindergarten entry, and we'll look at one of those available reports later in the presentation. So any new private provider must complete a private pre-kindergarten participation form. This includes the program name, the DFPS childcare license number, the address, director information. Once this has been completed and approved, the user will receive an organization ID and then may begin the next steps of the data entry process. If you're a returning user, then they would not have to complete this step and may move right towards the data entry process and TEAL access if there's any additional changes within that. So new users have to go through this initial form in order to get an organization ID. And once you've received your organization ID, you'll want to review the private pre-kindergarten instructions on the data submission process, download the review of the TEAL Quick Reference for Organization Approvers in the Business Partner Directory. The BPD is where all private pre-kindergarten programs are housed. Then you'd want to ensure you've downloaded the ECDS collection template from the core collections page. And then programs will then provide student information and special program information in the template that's then submitted to TEA. So what's hyperlinked in this slide would be the instructions, the TEAL reference guide, and then the collection template, which will be shared. So if you're a new or returning private provider or know of any private providers that want to participate, our information technology training team will be providing a TEAL overview for private pre-kindergarten providers. This training will focus on TEAL setup, the approval process, and requesting access to an application. This will be held on May 3rd. From 10 to 11:30. We've included the overview, the focus, and then the registration information within the PowerPoint, but we will also be making that available through distribution emails as well. So please feel free to relay this information to any private providers that would like to participate in ECDS. So we can ensure that we can support them as best as possible in the TEAL process to ensure that we can expedite that process as much as possible and support the private providers. The Early Childhood Data System leverages data from the Public Education Information System and the Texas Student Data System. All the data elements have specified data standards for each local education agency to follow. So just a little bit of a highlight on the TSDS core collections. So in the core collections, the Texas Education Data Standards, Section 10 specifically relates to ECDS. So this will include the data standards for public pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and private pre-kindergartens that opt to participate. So this will include the data elements, specific code tables, examples, interchanges, and complex types, which are really more specific for student information systems or assessment vendors. So this section is very familiar to any PEAMS champions or ECDS champions, or as I had mentioned, any student information systems or assessment vendors. So that core collection page is hyperlinked within that slide that directly takes you to the early childhood data standards for that. So let's talk about the ECDS assessment specification. So this is a new public-facing document. Previously, this had been internal. So in core collections, we've now published the ECDS pre-K and kindergarten assessment specifications document. This is meant to assist the data collection for each assessment instrument. The document includes the assessment title, the assessment code, the assessment subject, the specific score range, the benchmark, and if they were not assessed in a specific domain, guidance chart. Each LEA should consult with their assessment vendors regarding the ECDS collection. However, we've been working closely with them on this collection. So each assessment vendor is expected to provide districts with an XML file extract to provide the agency. So as I had mentioned, we've been communicating directly with this requirement, and our division in early childhood has collaborated with our information technology division here at TA and provide various technical assistance, technical support to vendors so they may meet this requirement. Many of them have already met that for the kindergarten collection that closed in January, so they're very familiar with what that needs to look like. So it should go smoothly for the pre-kindergarten collection that will close this summer. However, if your assessment vendor still has questions, the ECDS team is willing to continue to assist them in that process. We'll be planning some webinars with the assessment vendors over the summer to ensure that they're prepared for next year as well. But we have a couple here in the interim as we prepare for this pre-K collection. So just high level about the ECDS data entry process. In order to submit ECDS data, there are 4 TSDS portal user roles needed: the unique ID, campus role, the operational data store campus loader, the ECDS approver, and the TSDS instant management system. However, the same person may have multiple roles, just depending on which, how entities look. So some of them may have multiple roles for those roles that are needed. So each ESC has a TSDS champion. So each education service center has a champion dedicated for TSDS. So there's a PEAMS champion, a dashboard champion, a unique ID champion, a TEAL, and ECDS champion. So just like at the user level, at the ESC level, it's possible that they may be the same person. So you may have the ECDS and PEAMS person being the same champion. These champions will assist in the technical aspects of data loading and submission process. If they have issues and need support, they'll escalate that to the agency for additional input to see how we can support that issue. So any issues that are problematic that can't be resolved at the local or regional level will then be escalated to TA so we can provide that support as needed. So we have many partnerships. Public schools have partnerships with licensed childcare, Head Start. So just a little bit information on the partnership guidance we're providing. So any LEA that has a partnership with a Head Start or licensed childcare will need to follow specific partnership guidance when submitting data within ECDS. So if they have a partnership with a private pre-kindergarten and they're currently using a non-campus-based instruction code, this is generally when the teacher is not employed by the district. ECDS will require specific reporting requirements that the LEA provide teacher information for the pre-kindergarten staff who taught that course section information. So if the staff information is not provided for ECDS, the LEA will receive a fatal business validation and will be unable to complete the ECDS submission. We have created a knowledge base article about that, which I'll share a little bit later in the presentation, that provides guidance on doing so. So essentially, there has to be staff information for those programs that have partnerships with a Head Start or licensed child care program. It's the only way to get a lot of the information that we would need to complete the submission. So our Texas Student Data System team has developed and produced knowledge-based articles, as I had mentioned, to support LEAs in the data submission process. These are really helpful and should be reviewed. They're as a resource for LEAs and the ECDS champions. Many of them have a general FAQ. As you see, these are all hyperlinked as well. You do have to have TSDS access and access to TIMS, which is the Texas Incident Management System, in order to view these. So you would have to have that role. But then they have knowledge-based articles about requesting and approving TEAL, and then interchanges created from ECDS that specifically refer to the private pre-K. Some additionals regarding loading guide for public pre-K data, a loading guide for public pre-K no assessments, loading guide for private pre-K, and then private pre-K general FAQs, and then the MOU partnership knowledge-based article, which I mentioned in that guidance document. So couple of these are essentially frequently asked question type documents, how-to guides that are just there as a resource. If there's not an answer within one of those knowledge-based articles, then you would submit that TIMS ticket for further analysis and information. So with all the data that's been submitted to the agency for pre-kindergarten, has now created a lot of available early childhood education data that's available to the state agency, to each individual user, so each LEA, as well as each education service center. So some of the pre-kindergarten reports that are available in ECDS, these are specific ones that are available within TSDS, primarily available for data quality checks, identify missing student information and assessment information, basically ensuring that the number of students enrolled may match the number of students assessed, or be able to identify if you're missing a cohort of students or a class of students, or if for some reason you're missing specific assessment information that could be reloaded. So this would just be an example of a pre-K completion report. It's listing the LEA name, the campuses, the year, the status, so if it's prepared or completed, the total campuses, the total students entered, and so then it'll have a list of the campus or program, the student assessments, which is the number, and then the students entered, and then also prepare and finalize date. These all have date marks on them to be able to have that accuracy. So this is an example of the ECDS assessment pre-K sources report. This is also at the LEA level, includes the school year, the LEA. So it'll include the total campuses or programs, the total number of pre-K programs, the student enrollment, the total number of high-quality pre-K students, so if they've made that high-quality indicator, the percent, the total percent match, because this is the pre-K sources, so it's looking at the students that went on to kindergarten with a commissioner-approved assessment. So this is one of those reports that's very helpful for those private providers or even those pre-kindergarten programs that had children go on to kindergarten to internally view those kindergarten sources reports. The total percent of students kindergarten ready, and then the not ready. And then it'll list each campus program by name, the pre-K program type, so public pre-K program, and then as I had mentioned, the student enrollment numbers, the number of high-quality pre-K students. So it just kind of breaks it out by the total numbers in each individual campus and program for this specific level. There are various levels of these reports, just depending on the user and the access. So you would be able to look at a district level. Regional champions would be able to look at a regional level, and then state, we're able to look at the state level of these reports in aggregate form as we progress through the collection to see how far we are along, if we've got 50% of districts that have submitted and completed their information, 75, 80, and then hopefully 100% by the end of or middle of July. So those are all reports that are available to the user internally. So let's talk a little bit about the reports available in TPEER. So with the increase in data collected in TEA has developed public-facing reports to display this information. TPEER stands for Texas Public Education Information Resource, which is housed in our Research and Evaluation Division and has published the following reports. These focus on pre-kindergarten enrollment for 3 and 4-year-olds at the state, district, and campus level. It also includes the data download. It also includes the pre-kindergarten assessment report for commissioner-approved assessments with beginning and end-of-year assessment scores. The last report includes kindergarten programs, enrollment, and readiness reports at the state, district, and campus level. So you'll see that we have quite a high volume of reports that are now available to the public. These are available, most of them are available for about 4 cohort years going back. So we will have 17, 18 as the most current, but then we'll be able to go back to 14, 15 in the pre-kindergarten and kindergarten program reports. So a really good number of years to be able to view at those state, district, and campus level. And just as a reminder, those data downloads are available at the region as well. I think at state, district, but those are available at the region as well. So this is just an example of the pre-kindergarten program and enrollment report for ages 3 and 4. You'll see the breakout of the total students enrolled for 3 and 4, the economically disadvantaged, the number of ELLs, the number of homeless, military, special education, foster care. But then you'll also see a breakout between those that are in full day or half day, and then those that are total enrolled, and then ADA eligible and non-ADA eligible. So the ADA eligible are going to be those students that are eligible in generating state funds. Those that are not eligible are either tuition paying students or they're being paid for out of local funds and are not coded as eligible. You'll also see at the districts providing pre-K, so full day only, half day only, and then full and half day. But then the bottom two sections, which are our newest addition to the reports, which is the breakout of the curriculum that's used. So you can see the number of students in districts and see just the variations of the specific curriculum that's used across the state and the number of districts that those curriculums are impacting. And then you'll also see the class size and ratio numbers. So you see the number of students that fall within specific class sizes, and then the number of students that fall within specific ratios that are listed there. So all great information to have available to us and be able to share across the state. The pre-kindergarten assessment results for 4-year-olds. This is just an example of that at the state level. So this is matched data, looking at the 5 academic subjects that are collected, the number of assessed, the percent assessed, and then the proficiency at the beginning of year and end of year, and then the percent, and then the percent difference. So just a high-level visual of the data sets for those commissioner-approved pre-kindergarten assessments for those students that had a BOI and EOI assessment. And then lastly, the Texas Public Kindergarten Programs and Kindergarten Readiness. I know a majority of this webinar has been focused on pre-kindergarten data reporting, but those pre-kindergarten programs that collaborate with their kindergarten partners have this report that's available to them. Same format in the enrollment section, but then has a breakout for the kindergarten readiness for all kindergartners, and then those that attended pre-K the year before for 80 or more days. So just a high-level visual of that information. So the resources that are available to support this webinar in the Early Childhood Data System, the TA correspondence letter that went out in last September. This was announcing the collection for public pre-K, high quality pre-K, private pre-K, and kindergarten, with the data elements collected and the associated collection timeframes. Section 10, which is the TSDS core collections for ECDS. Link to the ESC TSDS champions. So if you're wondering who your early childhood data system champion is, you can click on that link and see who's best apt to support you. And then also our ECDS program page is hyperlinked here as well. So we'll have take a few minutes here for some questions. However, always feel free to email the ECDS at ta.texas.gov for any program and policy questions. If you have technical questions, like if you're stuck in the data loading process or data submission process, feel free to submit a TIMS ticket through the incident management system or email TSDS customer support. But really the TIMS ticket is the preferable way. If there is an issue with the data submission and there's errors and you're unsure of what the error is, that authorizes our IT team to go in and look at the data, since it's owned by the district at that point and not completed. So it allows them to better assist districts and finding and identifying what that problem is. Okay, so we had a question, where does a private pre-kindergarten find the form? So it is in the TA correspondence letter that went out. There's a section at the bottom of that that indicates requesting a new application. I can certainly send that out to folks afterwards, but there is a link. It's also in the data instructions handout as well. So there's a PDF document that says for new pre-kindergarten programs, complete this form, which is hyperlinked. So that's where it's located. But if you can't find it, feel free to email me and we can publish that out there. We'll also be sure to share that information on the upcoming private pre-kindergarten webinar that our business team is doing for the TEAL process. So there's a question, is there any chance that a regional report will be developed or accessible for ESCs to reference? So there would be internal, so in the TSDS report, there'd be some ESC level reports available. And then externally at the TPeer, right now it is in the data download section. We have had discussions with our TPeer team about creating a more visually friendly ESC level report that more follows the line of the district, campus, and state level reports. So we are looking into that to make that change. So hopefully we will be able to do that in the future. It's just not available at this time. So another question on the TPeer. Okay, since we have a little time, I'm just going to pull up where the data download is so you all can see it before we close out. So this is the TPeer reports page, so Texas Public Education Reports. And under pre-K to 12, you'll see the pre-kindergarten assessments, pre-kindergarten programs, kindergarten programs, and readiness. So these are kind of the three reports that were displayed. So let's look at the kindergarten programs. Well, we'll pull up the pre-K since we're on that topic. So you'll see state, district, and school, and then data download. If you click on the data download, it'll then display district data download and then regional data download. So if you click on the regional, you can open that file. And the information, the same information is there, it's just not in the graphs and charts like the other version. So we'd like to move to that point, but at a minimum, we want to ensure that the data sets were there. So you'll see same information, pre-K enrollment, first grade, districts, schools providing pre-K, pre-K enrollment. However, once you have that, then you can filter for your specific region and then filter out any non-applicable regions for you to use. So this would be the same for the kindergarten report as well. So we had one question about the data download coming at blank on the pre-K. I'd have to look into that specific case, so maybe feel free to reach out to me afterwards. It may be due to if it was a small or rural district, and there may not have been enough information to produce, and it may have been masked. Sometimes those are some reasons why you may not see data, just due to the FERPA masking rules that we have to follow for a specific number of students. So if you are running into a problem where you're not seeing your data, always feel free to reach out to me with any questions on that. So we had a question on what is TA and MOU. So TA stands for To the Administrator Addressed. That's our correspondence information. So I'll show you just real quickly. Here is the TA correspondence for ECDS. So you can navigate that on the home page, going to TA correspondence. And so that brings the To the Administrator Addressed correspondence. And then the easiest way to find information would be just to be a search for the topic that you're looking for, and then you'll be able to click the most recent. So there's a question on the pre-K curriculum report, what is null? If it's in an internal report, it may be that they did not submit either one of the approved curriculums and did not select other, so it might have just been left blank, and so essentially it's a no response. But if you have a report that shows that, I'd be happy to look at that further. But I do know that that specific code table allows for the approved curriculums, and then an other category if a district has a locally developed or other. And if they didn't select either of those, it may come up as null. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions come in. So with that, if there are no more questions, we will conclude the webinar. Let me just make sure. All right. Looks like we got through all the questions. If you, for some reason, think of a question afterwards, feel free to reach out to us directly. You can email the ECDS at tea.texas.gov, or if it's a technical question, like I said, have your champion submit a TIMS ticket. Thank you all for joining us today and attending the Prekindergarten Data Submission webinar. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all that you do for the state of Texas and all the hard work that you guys put in and day out. We can't thank you enough. We're here to support you, so feel free to reach out after this webinar. We'll make this available to our webinar recordings page as well as the PowerPoint, and reach out in the meantime. Thanks a lot, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thank you. Bye-bye.